Okay. Stealing the microphone away from the music. Stealing the microphone away from the music. Stealing the microphone away from the music. Okay. A little feedback. Got some things going here. Hi James, Daniel, Maureen, Adina. Yeah, we got a lot of out-of-towners. Yvonne, hi. Daniel is now he was living here. He's living in New Mexico. Maureen was living here. She's now in California. Adina spends a lot of time in Arizona, but now she's living in California. John Hoffman, hello. Lisa, hello. So welcome everybody. Nice to see some familiar names and everything. I hope everybody's doing well with the damn panic. That's what I call it, the damn panic. Just a reminder that we should be using this time to do some practices. And one of the practices that I think a lot of us enjoy doing is meditation, of course. I'm going to be talking a little bit about meditation, and then we will do a meditation, and then I'll probably talk a little bit more about meditation and some things like that that are related to meditation. I'd like to say the other paths, the other modalities related to meditation. So there's, I heard a story the other day, and there was a party. I thought it was an amusing story, so I'll tell it. I'm shortening it down to just a fraction of what the story actually says. I mean, the full length. But there was a party after an event. This event was where they had a lot of different speakers, and the person that put on the event put on a little invited some of the speakers and some of the main people to a dinner party at his house, and it was a dinner party of about 150 people. And they had some entertainment, and they had a lot of food and all these kinds of things. One of the entertainment things they had was like a magic yogi. And whether he was a yogi or whether he was a magician, I think he was both, actually, supposed to be both. And so part of the show was that the yogi was going to hold his breath for 7 minutes. And just to prove that he was holding his breath, he submerged him in water, a great big tank of water. And they lowered himself into the water, and then he just sat underneath the water and looked at the people for 7 minutes. And then after the 7 minutes were up, he did it. That was the big trick, and he kind of took care of himself after that ordeal, and he came out and met the people. And one of the people that were there, one of the speakers at this big convention, was Eckhart Tolle. And so Eckhart Tolle was there, and they wanted him to meet the magic yogi, and so they introduced him, and somebody was there, and he leaned over and asked Eckhart Tolle, he said, can you do that? Can you hold your breath for 7 minutes? And Eckhart Tolle said, no, I don't think I can do that. He said, but I can stop my thoughts for 7 minutes. And the magic yogi heard that, and he said, well, it's very, very much the same thing about what he did, is holding his breath. And of course, what he meant was that if he was underneath that tank, thinking all the time, thinking about what was going to happen and all this, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold his breath. And an interesting thing about the human brain is that it uses about 24% of our energy within the body. You would think a muscle, like the muscles would use a lot of the energy, but it is actually, or maybe one of the other organs, like our heart, which is pumping all the time, lungs, whatever. But it is the brain that uses about 24% of our energy, which is a huge amount. And that is including while we're sleeping too, the brain activity while we're sleeping. So it's what this magic yogi or this yogi magician, whatever, was saying, that if he was thinking, he would have used his energy, the energy that he needed to hold the oxygen within his blood. He would have needed that energy that he built up. Surely he built up energy before he submerged himself and was able to hold his breath for 7 minutes. And this is something that can be done. Other people have done it. It just takes a lot of training and a lot of, you have to be, your body has to be conditioned perfectly. You have to eat the right foods. You're an athlete, going in and doing this, and your mental functioning has to be right on as well. Very, very little thinking. If you can turn off the brain, you can save a lot of energy. So, turning off the brain, interesting thought. And if my brain was turned off, would I even be thinking these things? Not in the way that we probably think. And that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about tonight, is concentration and how it pertains to meditation. And then we will do a practice in a little bit here. I haven't really been talking about concentration a lot lately. I've been leaving that, I've been leaving that up to Ryan Nimick, one of my students and one of my friends, that has kind of stepped into that role of Jhana, which Jhana is a Pali word that means concentration or focus. And so he's been doing some teaching in that area. So I kind of was able to step back from the area of concentration and go into different areas of teaching. So, and then with this damn pandemic, Ryan has been teaching online, just like everybody else. And so I thought I would talk a little bit about concentration tonight, and on a very much of a layman's term, because a lot of times when we talk about concentration, we use these new words, and people get scared by these words. They think, do I have to know what access or jhana or momentary concentration or do I have to know all these things? And the answer is not really. Some of this information will be helpful if you want to practice concentration, if you want to go into these deeper states of jhana, deeper states of concentration. But the language that I'm speaking, some of the words that I'm using, if they confuse you and you feel like an urge to, I got to figure this out and look it up so I can be a better meditator, that's not where you want to go. Because the simpler the better, not only in meditation but in life, I believe. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. When we look at concentration, the concentration that we use in meditation is different than the concentration that we might be asked to use if we're doing our homework as a child. Concentrate and do your homework before you come out of your room. I was told that as a kid, to concentrate on your homework and get it done, those types of things. And a lot of times, even if we're trying to complete something, or maybe something at work, something at home, we feel like we have to really concentrate and get it done before we can move on to the next thing. And that's very common. But that type of concentration is more of what I call a stick-to-itiveness, which is very important. in life. Stick-to-itiveness is a real word. It means to stay with something, to start it, finish it up, and move on. Stick-to-itiveness is to stick with it. It's not only procrastination, like getting into the thing, but it's also keep mechanically working at it and keep mentally working at it until it's finished. Stick-to-itiveness, which is a little bit different than the concentration aspect that we're looking at in meditation. And the idea, first of all, that meditation can improve concentration is absolutely true. And it can improve the kind of concentration that we need in life to make ourselves more concentrated in life, to be able to focus more in life. And so they're two different things, but to practice concentration, I know no better way than to do it in meditation, as a meditation practice. That's not the only kind of meditation you can do, but it is a part of it. And let me explain by what I mean with that. There are basically three types of concentration that come from the Pali teachings of the meditation practices. There's two different types of meditation, first of all. One is called Vipassana, and the other one is called Jhana, which is the concentration aspect. And then there's various things that intermingle in that, contemplation, for example, and other types of mindfulness-based practices. And now keep in mind that I'm talking about the Eastern, when I say Pali, I'm talking about the language that the Buddha spoke, and I'm talking about the Eastern traditions, the Eastern practices. Not the Western types of practices, but Vipassana and Jhana are Eastern Buddhist practices, Theravada Buddhism. And Vipassana is very much like a mindfulness-based practice. I often look at mindfulness as a byproduct, a very welcoming, healthy byproduct of a good meditation practice. So if we are practicing concentration or Vipassana, the result would be a very high degree of mindfulness throughout our day. And it's my belief that if meditation only served us while we're sitting in meditation, I would go so far as to say, why do it? Because that is not the truth. Meditation is designed for us to enhance our lives in many different ways. To get to know the present moment better, which is what Eckhart Tolle called the now. From that story that I told you, by the way, Eckhart Tolle is the author of The Power of Now. And he really sinks home the idea of presence, the stillness, which is a part of concentration as well. And it's also a part of Vipassana. So I'm kind of veering off in different directions here. I wanted to clarify Vipassana and concentration as being kind of two different practices, two different teachings too. So concentration, there are basically three levels of concentration. The first level is what is called momentary concentration. And a lot of people practice meditation in this momentary area. And it's called momentary concentration because our attention is on something, and then it's off, and then it's on, and then it's off. It's momentarily on, then it's off. It's momentarily on, and it's off. It happens all day long for us. It's very much likened, if you want to get an idea of what I'm referring to, imagine that you're speaking with somebody at a party, and they're speaking, telling you some really interesting things about their life, and it really resonates with you, and you're really connected with that conversation with that person. And then they start talking about their grandparent or somebody in their family that you have no idea what they're talking about, and you're starting to wonder if they even know what they're talking about, so the mind wanders off. And even though you try to stay engaged, your mind is wandering off because you have no interest in what they're talking about. And then again, they start talking about something interesting, like spiritual development or I was going to say the pandemic, but I don't want to go there. They're talking about meditation and you're really engaged. And so you're momentarily right on in that conversation. And then they start talking about something, something that happened in the past, and your mind starts wandering again. So that's an idea or an example of momentary concentration. And we do that all day long. You probably did it while you're listening to my stories here. You're engaged and you're unengaged. You're engaged and then you're off of it. So many people practice meditation in that area, especially if we're tired, if there's very little energy in the body. We have trouble staying engaged with our meditation object, which is generally something as simple as the breath, something boring as the breath, and there's a reason for that. And then we're looking at a type of concentration that is called access concentration. And access concentration is when we feel this energy in the body, when we're less concerned about the past or the future. The thoughts start simmering down. We don't need all this thinking going on. We're okay with the way things are. We are comfortable, temperature's good, and we just feel like we're kind of sinking into our meditation object. Let's say we're focusing on the breath and everything feels good. Hardly any noise, temperature's right. And so we're starting to have access to a deeper state. We might not be there yet, but we have access to it. We could feel it, that this is going well for me. I'm really enjoying this. It's easy to sit. It's easy to focus. Everything is just easy and very pleasant. So that's access concentration. If we can practice access concentration again and again and again, we'll surely get into the next step called absorption. And absorption is when we actually feel like we are absorbed into our meditation object. So if we're focusing on the breath, we'll use the breath as the ideal meditation object here. So I'm focusing on the breath. I feel it right here in my nose. And there's no struggle for me to keep my attention there. And in fact, that feeling of that breath that I really created, it feels so good that it's hard to distinguish that feeling between being opposite of me, being a different part of me, or being actually me. And so we are fused together, that feeling, that meditation object, and the rest of this mind-body experience. It's all one. So my mind doesn't have to go out and search for that meditation object because it's right there. It's right there with me. And even the idea of a meditation object separate from me is a foreign feeling. And that is the first feeling that a lot of people would describe as a first point of access absorption. So it's momentary concentration, access concentration, and then absorption. And absorption is often called jhana. Jhana is these deeper states, and for the most part, the worldly, what we could consider the worldly jhanas, there's 4 of them. And then there's 4 jhanas even underneath those that we might not get a chance to touch on here. Otherwise, we wouldn't get a practice in. And so if you're new to meditation and these words, momentary, access, absorption, are foreign words to you, don't worry about it. It's just something that actually happens naturally if we consistently practice meditation. We will get into these deeper states of absorption if we practice every day and from time to time really kind of push it more. Practicing every day. If we're practicing concentration, we would want to practice probably an hour a day. We want to be a fairly serious meditator, and then probably even want to push it a little bit more, and from time to time, maybe once or twice a week, practice a couple hours a day. That's what this kind of practice really needs. It needs complete control of the situation, mind and body. And when we feel like we're getting someplace in our jhana or concentration practice, we want to figure out exactly what we did and follow that to a T. And actually, tea could be a part of it. And I don't mean that in a funny way, but we should be very careful about what we ate, what we drank, if it is tea or coffee or whatever, before we did our practice. And so whatever is working for us, we want to do that exactly every time we go to practice. Until after a while, we don't have to follow that so, I guess I could say, religiously, because we will get so used to going into absorption or concentration, jhana, that we won't have to follow that. But while we're training to go into jhana, we want to know exactly what we did in order to really familiarize ourselves with the practice. The first time I went into jhana, I was doing a 3-hour-a-day meditation. That was once a week, and then throughout the week, I was practicing anywhere from an hour to a couple of hours a day. And it was that 3-hour practice where it actually I felt the tipping point, and then it worked for me. So just to give you an idea. And please don't let that discourage you if you're new to meditation or if you don't have an hour a day to practice. Being consistent is what matters. So the secret, if there is a secret besides the practice itself, the idea behind meditation is this being in this presence, because we cannot concentrate if we are thinking about the past or if we're thinking about the future. There is no jhana with the past and the future, because these is basically our anger and our fear, two of the big hindrances that we have from getting into jhana. Some of the other hindrances are desire. We can still have a desire to have a good meditation practice, but in that desire, that's very wholesome, it is completely different than the desire to have something to eat, the desire to be someplace else, the desire to be doing something. These are so energetic that they won't allow jhana to happen. Desire for things to be different than what they currently are is a desire that can not conducive to jhana. Any kind of anger towards ourselves or towards others will not work. Restlessness and worry, the habitual patterns of the mind, you want to take care of that. This is worrying about the past, worrying about the future, things that we just create. And these are patterns that we have been doing all of our life, so they're not exactly easy to stop, but they do have to stop in order for jhana to happen. When, as mentioned earlier, we need energy within the body, we can't be fatigued and still expect to have jhana or to maintain jhana. We want to have energy in the body. I'm getting out a clock here to keep tabs on the time so it doesn't get carried away. Also, we need to have faith in our practice. We want to believe that we can have concentration, that we can have jhana, and that is having no doubt in our practice. And that comes with consistency. When we start noticing the benefits of meditation, then we have little doubt in the practice, and it becomes a part of our life. And our overall life, we feel complete, with our life and with who and what we are, what we represent, and we enjoy life to its fullest extent, just through the practice of meditation. Now, if you can imagine not having any of these hindrances, it's going to benefit us whether we're practicing jhana, concentration, or if we're just meditating or not. And again, I can't emphasize enough the idea of being present, because in this presence, there is very, very little hindrances. Once these hindrances stop, then we realize that the thinking has shifted a great degree. There's very, very little thinking going on. When there's no thought, happiness arises, blissfulness arises. And that blissfulness can be a little bit too energetic, so that'll subside, that'll come down, And what will be left is just some single-pointed concentration, some happiness, and then we will find ourselves in a completely different state than we would normally find ourselves in our meditation, and that is first jhana. And it starts by eliminating the hindrances, desire, anger, restlessness and worry, fatigue and doubt. Primarily the past and the future. The past and the future, I'm sorry to say, don't have very much use in the practice of concentration. They have a usage for us in life, and of course that's where all of our lessons come from. So it is important, but if we want to practice concentration, jhana, the past and the future have to be put on hold. We can pick it up later after the practice. So I hope that is clear enough. Once we go into the first jhana, we practice, remember how we did it, all the fine little details of how we got into that jhana, and I promise you, if you can do that and practice it daily, you'll go into the second jhana, eventually the third jhana, and the fourth jhana. The first jhana, it can be so liberating feeling. You feel so complete that you'll swear that you're enlightened. And in many ways, you have woken up to a certain degree because you realize that there is much more to this stuff than what we're experiencing. Even with the eyes closed, even with no sounds, even with no thought, there is a wonderful, wonderful experience just waiting there to be explored, and that is jhana. If you have any questions about this, I'll talk a little bit about it after our meditation, but if you have any questions about it, ask myself. You can ask Ryan Nimick, send him an email. He'd be glad to help you. But I will certainly answer any emails regarding jhana. It's interesting that some of the most popular videos that I have out there on YouTube are the jhana videos. They don't have millions and millions of hits like a lot of the videos that people put out there. After all, this is just meditation. But they do have thousands of views. So people are interested in jhana. It's something that they're intrigued by. And there's a lot of people practicing it. It's a very wonderful, healthy practice. And we will do some of it right now. I'm going to guide us a little bit less than I normally would, because actually guiding has very little to do with jhana. And actually the guiding itself will pull a person out of the jhana if they feel like they're going into it. And whether we're actually going to be going into jhana or not is kind of beside the point. But if I keep guiding and guiding and guiding, it's kind of going against what I just explained. So I will do some guiding, but not for the entire practice. And so this will be about a half hour. So please join me. Make yourself comfortable. Gently close the eyes. One of the more prominent tips that I got from my teacher, Bhante Gudarantana, he told me that without metta, jhana is not possible. And so he's saying without love in our hearts, in our minds, we cannot go deep into concentration. The opposite of love is anger or hatred. It can be an unsettling of the mind, unsettling of the heart. also called ill will. We can be angry at ourselves or at others. And so it's very good advice to remember we have to have a loving heart in order to concentrate in our meditation practice. If there's something bothering us, we won't be able to concentrate. Not to its fullest extent. If we're fearful of something that might happen in the future, we won't be able to concentrate to our fullest extent. And so these two areas are completely mind-made. These disturbances we create ourselves. More and more science is showing us that we create our own diseases. We make ourselves ill for everything from the common cold to cancer. And 2,600 years ago, the Buddha knew these things. He taught us that we create our own suffering. Not only physical, but mental. We create our fear, we create our anger. We create the needless desires. And until we eliminate these things, we have doubt, we can have fatigue. And much of it is brought about by restlessness and worry, habitual patterns of the mind, worrying about the past, the things that have been done, worrying about the future. And now is a good time to set all of that aside. Just giving ourselves permission to rest. So bring your attention to the breath. Notice where you feel the breath the most along the body. So we're finding our meditation object. And once we've found the breath, see how long you can stay with it. Every time you notice that the mind wants to wander off, just simply remind yourself to stay with the breath. Give yourself a point, just like a game. Right now, you've given yourself permission to do nothing but focus on your meditation object. Nothing else is required. This is like a mental vacation. Nothing to do. No place to go. Nothing to plan for. Nothing to fear. Nothing to hide from. nothing to change. Nothing more is needed in this moment for you to feel absolutely 100% complete. Resting in the present moment, the stillness. If a thought arises, pay no attention. Thoughts come and go just like the breath. Nothing to hang on to. We want to find the sweet spot between the thinking mind and what is called the sinking mind, the sleepy mind. In between the thinking and the sinking is this place that we want to rest. And the best way to do that is to focus on our meditation object. Trust that nothing more is needed. And if the mind remains active, we just simply ask ourselves, what percentage or level of concentration are we able to use at this moment? Are you 50% concentrated? Are you 75% concentrated? Eventually we will become so concentrated that we won't have to ask that question anymore. A couple more minutes. Take a little deeper than normal inhalation of the breath. Expand the lungs a little bit. Gentle inhalations, gentle exhalations. Bring yourself back to your space. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that practice with me. You can bring your palms together in front of you if you like. This is a little bit of a metta practice. May each of us and all beings be well, happy and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems, any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you again. So that was about a half-hour practice, probably not enough for jhana unless a person's been practicing jhana for a while. They can easily get into jhana on just short meditations, but initially it takes longer meditations to do that. And if jhana is not your goal, if that's not a practice that you're interested in, that's fine. It can happen when a person isn't expecting it to happen. And if it does happen, now hopefully you understand a little bit more about jhana and how it works, if you haven't worked with it or known much about it previously. So we have to ask ourselves what hindrance is up, what's happening there. And there's 5 hindrances. Many of you know these, but I mentioned them a couple of times: desire, ill will, or anger, restlessness and worry, fatigue, or what is called sloth and torpor. That could be a mental cloudiness or a fatigue of the body or the mind. And then doubt. Doubt is the lack of faith in our practice, lack of faith in the teachings, just a feeling like, I don't know if this is going to work, that kind of thing. And so these 5 hindrances, they can come in disguises, and the disguises are that they combine each other. And sometimes we can have all 5 hindrances at one time. Sometimes, just a couple of them can be together. Sometimes one. When I ask people what their primary hindrances are, they usually come up with restlessness and worry. Restlessness and worry is something that we allow to happen. We worry about the past and the future. A lot of us, it's like an epidemic, us worrying about what's going to happen in the future. And none of it's going to happen the way we plan it. So if we can just kind of put a halt on that, we'll be helping ourselves out a lot. And just use the past as these lessons that need to be learned. What lessons aren't we getting? And that's from the past. But we don't want to be worrying about that in meditation practice, outside of meditation. So basically, anytime that we have difficulties, stress, it is something to do with the past and the future, or just a desire, wanting things to be different than what they currently are. And we can be absolutely happy and everything can be fine, and then all of a sudden we get bored with the situation, we want things to be different. That's a desire. And these are the kinds of things that the Buddha talked about as being our problems. They are the hindrances to our happiness and the hindrances to our a depthful meditation practice. A meditation practice with lots of depth to it. Creating new words here. I hope none of this is too confusing for you. It's not meant to be. The main thing is that we practice consistently. And if you've learned a musical language, a musical instrument, or a language in the past, you know that consistency is very important in learning anything. And it's that way with meditation. And if many people have been practicing meditation for years and years and years, and never really thought that there was a deeper place to get to, and that deeper place is jhana. And if you've dipped into it and dipped out, you know what I mean. And that dipping is when we have to really understand how we got in there so that we can practice getting in again and again and then staying there. So basically, as meditators, we have developed concentration. We know what we're doing, but that doesn't mean that we have control over our concentration. And that's the key between somebody practicing concentration and somebody doing vipassana, where they're just watching the mental activity and learning from that aspect. That's just vipassana in a nutshell. There's much more to it than that, but maybe we'll talk about that next week. And so ask yourself, what hindrances are bothering you? You'll find that these are the things that are causing you difficulty in life. And these are the things that have to be understood, accepted, and then let go of. And that's why meditation is such a wonderful practice. It teaches us to do that. And to be in that present moment, to be concentrated, to go into these deeper states. And as mentioned, if you want to ask any questions, matter of fact, let me see if we have anything here right now. Mostly highs. Hi, hello. Good evening. Somebody from Mesa. Thanks, John. I love teaching. Oh, great, Lisa, you got on board. Thank you. All right. Well, this is wonderful. We did very well. I thank everybody for watching. I love you. And if there's something I can help you with in your meditation practice, please let me know. If you have any questions off of the stream here, Shane@meditationlearningcenter.com, and I'll look for your email and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, keep meditating and be happy. Don't worry about anything, because it's all going to pass. We cause our own suffering, and we can end our suffering as well, right? So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.